Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all over this world. And it's Friday, and Friday means it's the Easy Talk. It's the Easy Talk, so it means it's Friday. And you know what? I've broken my golden rule again. Not more than 3 people. I've got 4 people, but I'm happy today because it's Friday. We've got a full house, and we've got so many topics. Well, we've got one topic, an important topic about Arsenal's lack of recruitment. But I'll see you guys on the other side of this music intro when we do the formal introductions. This Easy Talk, really, I can't wait. Yes, like I said, welcome back to Friday's Easy Talk, the flagship segment on Cannon Fodder TV. Before I get into this one, guys, you know what to do. Make sure you subscribe to Cannon Fodder TV on all platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and of course YouTube, so you can receive all the latest news and all the content across this platform here. Right, yes. Do the quick intros. We've got Eltel, the original Godfather. Eltel, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's nice we have a full house today. Fantastic.
Yeah. Likewise. We've got James Rowe, who's got some exciting news maybe later on.
Maybe. We'll see. But nice to be on. Nice to see you all again. I hope everybody's keeping well.
Well, there you go. And we've got Raj, North Bank Ninja. How's it going, friend?
Really good, really good. So thank you very much for having me on today. I'm really looking forward to the show.
Brilliant. And we've got a newbie. You know, first time, hopefully not the last time. And I've got to tell you what. I sent her a request to this chap here, and he said, "You know what? I'm quite busy. You know." I said, "Right, okay." But he said, "You know, get back to me in a couple of months' time, and we'll see." And I sent Alex a request, and Alex kindly accepted the request to come on to Cannon Fodder TV. Alex Stewart from Athletic, welcome to Cannon Fodder TV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. Right, so. The topic of the segment today, the recruitment at Arsenal, or the lack of the recruitment at Arsenal. You know, I've been watching and following Arsenal the best part of 43 years. And if I told you who was the head of recruitment back in 1977/78, who was the head of recruitment, Terry, back in the mid-70s?
Mid-70s would have been after Bertie Mee. And that'd be George Graham.
George Graham, right?
That'd be
so.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so, you know, of late, we've seen the departure of Raul Sanllehi, Sven Mislintat, who actually said in his own words that Arsenal is a complete mess, a complete mess. And then we see all the other departures. We see Ivan Gazidis, but for me, the one really stabilizer I remember back in the day was David Dein. Now I want to go to Raj first. You know, what's your thoughts about the current recruitment or the lack of recruitment at Arsenal, seeing that 55 members of staff and the majority of them were actually part of the scouting network at Arsenal? But what's your thoughts about the recruitment at Arsenal? What's going on?
I think there's a lot packed into that question. I mean, I'm not sure that we can say there's been a lack of recruitment. Like, I think it's about the quality of recruitment. How's that changed over time? And I think what's interesting is, you know, as an Arsenal fan, you look at the last, say, 20 plus years, you can see a lot of very significant events. And if we take an example, a significant event would be David Dein leaving. But a significant event that happened very close to that was moving to the Emirates. So sometimes when 2 big events like that happen, it's very hard to understand which exactly is driving the, you know, outcomes with regards to recruitment. You know, was it David Dein leaving that maybe saw things that meant that certain aspects of recruitment weren't what we liked, or was it actually that we moved to the Emirates, or was it other things? Sometimes it's hard to unpick that. But I think, you know, it's definitely there's question marks over the quality of recruitment over the last, you know, however many years. Too long it feels.
Yeah. Alex, I'll bring you in with your thoughts as well in regards to the lack of quality of recruitment at Arsenal.
Yeah, I think the problem seems to be that it's a bit haphazard, and Arsenal spend quite a lot of money They bring in big players. They sign them to large wage deals as well. But it's hard to see perhaps that there's a systematic approach to squad building. Obviously, some of that is to do with transitions in management. Different managers want different players. They would play different styles. But I think if you're looking at the importance of a figure like a Mislintat or a Sanyehi to kind of oversee a process slightly out of the manager's hands, to say, you know, they're going to be playing this particular style. We will go and find those players that fit and that work, and have a consistent approach. That seems to be what is lacking currently. It's a bit hit and miss.
But there goes the question. We've got like our top earners are on the wrong side of 30, and they're on a lot of money, and so the fan base, the supporters, are demanding a lot more from these high earners at Arsenal, and they're not producing the goods. James, you know, we've spoken so many times about that issue there. You know, what's your thoughts about the current style of recruiting? And I actually forgot to throw in a Francis Kigal, who was the head scout, who's also left with the 55-member staff. What's your summarization of the recruiting at Arsenal?
Well, just to touch on Sven Mislintat, he went on to Stuttgart, who are now doing very well in the Bundesliga. I think it's a lack of identifying players. It's putting player reputation above characteristics such as hard work and talent, and the previous of a player as well. That's also very important. And also to kind of go away from the bubble a little bit. If you look at the teams that are doing particularly well this season, at Real Sociedad in Spain, Lens in France, who have always had a tremendous youth academy. And, you know, these are teams that have maybe different structures to Arsenal, but they're willing to give youth players a chance. There's a pathway for the youth players. Because if you think Arsenal spends a lot of money and a lot of time bringing up the youth players. And I remember my interview with Charlie Gilmore from April this year, when he obviously left the club and signed for Norwich and went on loan to Telstar here in the Netherlands. And he was telling me that when you come through the Arsenal youth setup, you know, you're given the best facilities in the world, your best coaches, you get to fly around the world and do amazing tournaments. And when you leave the club, you automatically think that, you know, the queue ran the block for you. But he soon came to realise that Championship clubs and Premier League clubs don't want to take a chance on a young boy in a man's game. And I just think that the club at the moment, they're not able to have the conviction and the courage to go for players who are maybe not so well known, players that have performed well previously. And I just think also as a fan base, especially the younger generation, they appear to judge a player on his price tag rather than work rate, character and previous. And I think that's also a dangerous sign of the times.
Terry, your thoughts.
Yeah.
On
the correction. The manager for us in the 70s, of course, or mid 70s, was Terry Neal, of course, ex centre half. No, I was just thinking that what we've done over the last 4 or 5, 6 years is we've zigzagged. The only good thing about that time is we are starting to produce some very good youth players, but we've sort of zigzagged. We've had Emery, who wanted Monchi. We've had Mislintat, who seemed to be doing a good job, and then his face didn't fit with Sanlehi. Sanlehi then wanted to do it via his contacts, and we have Kia Jurabchan, who kind of stepped in. And there's, if you start to look at the players Arsenal currently have, an awful lot have Kia Jurabchan as their as the guy that has introduced them as their sort of agent. And there's a lot of queries about whether William, for instance, who is a client of Jurabchan, there are queries now because of his current form. In fact, I've only one really good match, which was the first match of the season against Fulham. And it brings into disrepute in some of our minds that maybe working with these agents and allowing them to have a big say is not working, or at least if it were working, you need somebody, a few more people alongside Arteta that can kind of step back and look at how things are going. So, for instance, I read that they had to get a creative midfielder in because Aubameyang was basically saying, I won't sign unless I can see a way forward, and I need somebody who can set me up with chances. And along comes allegedly Jarabjian and says, I've got Willian for you. And as I think nearly every Arsenal supporter I've spoken to has been very disappointed with his standard of play. So if you look at it, there's been, apart from the youth setup, which please God, they aren't going to change that, because we've had some cracking players come through it over the last maybe 7 or 8, 9, 10 years. But it's been a zigzag. Emery, are we going to have Monchi? Then they got rid of, as you say, Francis Kajal. Then you had Sanlehi. Then you had Jarabjian coming in. And it's all been a mishmash and a kind of a mess. And that wouldn't happen if the directors, and they've got a lot to answer for here, if our directors were more hands-on. We know that Stanley Kroenke isn't hands-on. We know Josh Kroenke has come and, you know, had a lot more of a say. But you get a feeling that I think our manager is a very good manager in the making. But we haven't got somebody around him that is going to talk to. I know we've got 2 assistants, but I don't really rate them. And I have heard on the grapevine, I don't know which one it is, but one of his 2 assistants there, Steve Round or the other guy, might be going in the very near future. So I think looking at it from a fan's point of view, there seems to be something missing over the last 5 or 6 years. There hasn't been a thread of a single thread of an idea how we're going to build Arsenal into this modern era, and that's very worrying. We've zigzagged, and then we've got players on far more expensive contracts than they really should be, and on long contracts. And you know, for most Arsenal supporters, it's looking messy. And I'm not complaining about Arteta. I think he's doing a fantastic job. But I don't think he's surrounded himself with at least one more older head, a director of football that really knows his stuff. I'm not having to go at Emery, but you've probably all seen about a year ago, there was an interview with Sanlehi and Edu. And Edu came out of as sort of Sanlehi's lapdog. His facial expression was, well, I'm not going to say anything that this guy isn't going to like. And I'm just worrying that maybe Arteta needs an older head there to just steer him. And most clubs, I would have thought, have at least one person on the directors that has that, if you like, football experience that can talk to him. And you've got an issue there about why, with all the ex-players, Bob Wilson and all the other guys that are around, we don't have an old head with Arsenal values on the directors to be able to talk to him.
It might sound like a simplistic question, but who should be recruiting the players? And where is the scouting network, Raj? Where's the sorry, go on.
Look, I think on the face of it, there's a bit of bad luck that I think has also been involved here, right? At the end of the day, the Wenger situation was incredibly unique in terms of kind of power and the command that he had and the roles that he decided to perform himself. It's incredibly unique. When Gazidis almost finally got the ability to design a dream team and sort of see out the departure of Wenger, on paper, in theory, there was nothing wrong with what he did. He basically went and hired the head of recruitment for Dortmund. And how many teams recruit better than Dortmund? He went and hired the head of recruitment there. And there was also an argument that we weren't very good at dealing with the agents and doing a bit of the dark arts, and we needed someone to navigate that. And Raul Sanllehi represented that. On paper, it was almost like this little dream team. But I think the bit of bad luck that we had is ultimately no one, I think, foresaw Gazidis leaving. And I think it's very unusual for a CEO in any kind of organization to come in, assemble a team like that, and then disappear. It was all very strange. And then suddenly things got things got quite difficult. We saw Mislintat leave, and then it was Sanley at the helm, and that was never designed that way, right? And I think then this idea of Monchi, I mean, in theory, he's probably number one of the recruitment list of most top clubs in the world when it comes to heads of recruitment, those type of roles. So I don't in terms of the people that we sort of targeted to have the power to influence those decisions, I don't really think it was that wrong by design and intention. I think there's been a bit of bad luck. I think at the end of the day, what is clear is that whether it's by design or not, the formulas just haven't worked. I think Kagaggio, as much as against his name, has a lot of very good signings. He was also present in an Arsenal structure for a long period of time that the fans didn't believe was appropriate. We all criticized a lot of our transfer activity for when he was in a very senior position, already. So sometimes it's nice to rewrite history. It's nice to kind of point at certain things and say, what if this, what if that? I think right now the structure of Edu and Arteta, going into this more streamlined structure, time will tell whether that's going to work out. I think at the end of the day, if we look at the players who are performing well right now, we can say that Partey is a good signing, and we can say that Gabriel, for the money that we paid for him, looks excellent. I think on the basis of even those two recent signings, you can say, well, actually, we're looking at the right types of players. But look, I think, Alex, to sort of answer your question, I think what's clear is that all clubs are doing things slightly differently. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. If you ask me who runs, who's been integral to recruitment at Liverpool, I probably couldn't give you the answer of who that is specifically, but they recruit incredibly well. And I think that there are some clubs where you can pinpoint exactly who it is. So I think it's all quite different. And Alex, James, equally would be keen to hear your thoughts when you look at other clubs in European football, how they've structured what seems to work. My inclination is that Arsenal have sort of, like you sort of said, Alex, zigzagged a bit. I don't think that was by design. I think it's just sort of happened that way. And I'm hoping that at some point we can just land on something and stick with it, and it bears fruit.
Alex, what are your thoughts? Is it jobs for the boys? Eddie calls his friend, maybe across Europe, hey, I've got this player, rather than using the scouting system. Is it jobs for the boys?
I think there's always a danger of that. And if you look at the free transfers that came in the last window, I'm a Southampton fan, and I saw quite a lot of Cedric. I saw quite a lot of Cedric, and when you guys came in for him and signed him on a free, I couldn't have been happier. That did seem like an odd one. But I would also agree, I think some of the recent signing activity by Arsenal has pointed towards players of the right sort of profile. So, you're looking for players. I mean, Partey, okay, at 27, he's a peak age player who's been integral to a very successful La Liga team. And that is unequivocally a good signing. But people like Saliba, Gabriel, Tierney, they're at the younger end. Even players like Torreira and Guendouzi that didn't necessarily work out, they are ticking the right boxes in terms of how I think a club should approach squad building. Squad building, of course, is not just about transfers. And I think there's a crucial point, say, with Mislintat. When he was as successful as he was at Borussia Dortmund, he was working under a sporting director, Michael Zorc. So, he was charged with finding players and bringing them in. But Zorc was overseeing, which youth academy prospects would be promoted, which players would have their contracts renewed, and so on. And I think the points that have been made about Arsenal's good youth development, so people like Saka or Willock or Smith Rowe coming through, Balogun, they are being thwarted to a degree by some of these other larger, previous signings on big wages, where there's perhaps a pressure to play them. And it's that overall, it's the integrated approach, I think, that makes a lot of sense. You can still have successes in the transfer market, and Gabriel, for example, arguably has been one of the signings of the season so far, and I say that as a neutral observer. But at the same time, if it's not part of a holistic thing that sees transfer activity alongside contract renewals, alongside youth promotion, as a whole squad building exercise, then you're going to have problems, because the different departments will kind of jar against each other. And I think that's maybe what is happening at Arsenal a bit.
just a quick question to you guys before I go to James. Did Arsenal really need to go into the market and buy a 27-year-old midfielder? Could they have not looked in the academy and maybe promoted Emma Smith Rowe to a squad number? And
I mean,
sorry.
They're different players. I think the issue that Arsenal have this season is penetrative passing around the penalty area and shot generation. Now, Partey is not the guy to do that, and arguably with someone like Ceballos, you've got that deeper progressive passing that Partey brings. I like Partey. I think he's well equipped for the Premier League. His ability to carry the ball through a press is very impressive. He's physically strong. He's got a good range of passing. So he's a good signing. Is he the signing that Arsenal specifically needed at that point to address the issues that they had in terms of having that creative player who can thread the ball through to people? Possibly not, but that I think is a separate issue.
Yeah, James, we've spoken quite a few times the last 3-4 years actually about recruitment and giving the academy players a chance. We said, once we do, or we pay for a big flagship signing, that the chances for an academy player to come through and feature in the senior squad, it diminishes. Thoughts?
Absolutely, and I would like more Arsenal fans to think about the welfare of young players. I've interviewed nearly 300 professional players and managers at all different levels of world football since 2016. And I've spoken to particularly young players who have been released from Premier League clubs who now go on to serve their careers elsewhere, about receiving a great education, but also in some cases having a little bit of a missed opportunity where they didn't really get a chance. These young players need to be given a chance. If you look at our European counterparts, particularly in the local club where I live in the city of Amsterdam, it's the bloodline of the club. As when one player leaves, a door opens for another young player, and that's the way it will always. Let's quickly touch on Gazidis, if I may. Robin van Persie released a Dutch podcast interview the day before yesterday. And it was really interesting to hear him speak in his mother tongue about particularly his time at Arsenal and not seeing eye to eye with Gazidis. Van Persie would give Arsenal encouragement and points as to how they could improve, and he felt that he wasn't taken seriously. He really felt as if when he would give his advice and his opinion as to how the club could improve. And another interesting, it looked before the Manchester United deal broke, but it was 99.9% sure that Van Persie was Juventus. And Van Persie even said Gazidis was extremely rude to Juventus, and wasn't professional, and rebuffed them, expecting 35 million euros as a transfer. And Van Persie was said to him, I'm 29 years old. It's highly unlikely that somebody's going to pay 35 million euros for me. And Van Persie even said himself that if you don't let me go to Juventus, you're going to end up with a possibility that I will sign for a rival club in England, which will not sit well with the fans. But that appeared not to be taken on board by Gazidis. And would you believe that in the middle of a summer transfer window, Gazidis went on a personal holiday for 2 weeks? So you are in the middle of a summer transfer window as the CEO of Arsenal, and you go on a personal holiday for 2 weeks where nobody can reach you. And in the end, Van Persie was sold to 20 personal responsibility. The people behind the scenes at the clubs, it's not just that they're in a very good position, maybe well respected, but they also have a massive responsibility to safeguard the welfare of the club. And in particular with Arsenal at board level, we don't seem to have any custodians. Terry makes a great point about, we don't have a hands-on owner. And for me, that's where it starts. For me, that is where it starts. Anything, and you don't look after it, it can start to decay. And if you look at the facts at this precise moment in time, we are 15th in the league. We are going to be facing a difficult team in the Europa League, what may, on Monday with the draw. Yes, we was in arguably the weakest group, but one of the things I also lament is particularly in Europe when we haven't won a trophy for years. I get the impression that some Arsenal fans think if it's not Barcelona or Bayern Munich, the rest must be a pub team. But you only have to go through the qualifying result league. I'm not talking about the group phase. I'm talking about the qualifying rounds, where the likes of Basel, Sporting Lisbon, and Besiktas were eliminated. And if you look at the last 32, whoever Arsenal are drawn against on Monday, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I worry that the fans will expect and think, oh, we'll beat them. And I think it smacks of ignorance, really. You know, football is a global game. It's a world game. And, of course, I'm in a privileged position speaking to professionals and players and managers on a regular basis. That the knowledge is there from what's gone before. But I just think some of our fans also need a little bit of a reality check. But it's a big world up there. And it doesn't just consist of players that have star names. If you look, for example, I've often stated how highly I rate Mark Albrighton. We've got Alex on the show tonight, who's a Southampton fan who will concur with me how good James Ward-Prowse is. I rate Todd Cantwell at Norwich. I've been told by Arsenal fans that those three players are not good enough to play for Arsenal, when all three of them were quite clearly would add something different to Arsenal Football Club.
Hotel.
Yeah. I mean, these are tough days for us as fans, but also Arteta. I feel sorry for him. He's in a real cleft stick now. He's come in last season and he's done exactly the right thing. He's shored up the back. He's found a way of playing that leaves lots of green grass for his forwards to run into, Ober and co. And now I think he's tried to change it too quickly to his preferred 4-3-3. He's realised that, and he's started to do what Emery did. And please God, he's going to stop this. He keeps chopping and changing too much. So we had that awful horseshoe shape passing where you get the ball up to the halfway line, and then it would always go out wide. So you ended up with a passing pattern that looked like a horseshoe. Then he decided to try and play a box. 4 players, if you like, perched outside what they call zone 14, the area just outside the penalty area, the sort of box there. And then he abandoned that for some reason. And he's doing this constant crossing of the ball. And everybody has said, well, if we had a big centre forward in there, that might be a great idea. But neither of our 2 forwards, or if you include Eddie Nketiah in it, none of our 3 main forwards are well known for heading the ball. So I think he's in a cleft stick because from what I've heard him say, he does have a plan. He knows where he's going, and I'm sure he does. He's a very organised guy. But he's also said, my problem is that in the short term, I have to win matches. And he has to win it with players that he'd rather not have at the football club. He's not got great athletes in the middle of the park in terms of his more senior players. He's got to play Xhaka, even though he turns slower than an oil tanker. And if you just look at the team he's inherited and the senior players, he must be scratching his head and thinking, how can I get this team to play well unless I go back to the 3 at the back or the 5, if you include the sort of wing backs, and then try and draw the opposition out of their sort of low block and create some space behind. I hope he goes back to that, because I know people have said if he gets another 3 or 4 games of defeats, the pressure in the press is going to mount. Now, one thing I must say, I don't know if anybody saw his interview where one of the interviewers after the game during the week said to him, have you got a plan for scoring the goals that you obviously need to score? And he said, yes. And he didn't say any more. And then the guy interviewing or the one after said, "Why didn't you expand on that?" And he said very tartly, he said, "Because I heard you lot laughing." So that's very hurtful to him. He's got pride. He knows what he's trying to do. And to hear the journalist laughing and smirking would wind me up. And it's obviously wound him up. And he's normally got a super cool persona. And I just worry that he's almost over trying too much. And I definitely think the players are letting him down. No doubt about that. I mean, it'd be very interesting. They all carry this thing in their jumper or jersey, which counts the number of steps they take and the kilometers they've sort of traveled. And some of those midfield players are not moving. They aren't moving into passing lanes. And he must know, but at the same time, he can't go in there and rip into them because they're his senior players. So he's got to he's got to bite his tongue, say just enough to keep them on board. I can tell from the way he's talking, he would love to put more of our younger players in there. We saw some great players come on against Dundalk in the last sort of 20, 25 minutes. They look really wonderful, but they aren't ready yet for the hurly-burly and the physical game of the English Premier League. So he's going to have to limp through this season, unfortunately. He did try to buy Aouar, didn't he? Which, as Alex was saying, he obviously wanted him rather than Partey, who's a lovely player, because Aouar can make things happen around that kind of zone 14 area. And it does worry me that he although they're calling him a manager, I don't think he has as much say as we all think he has in the players that are coming in. And I hope he's going to put his foot down now and give them a list and prioritize it. And I'm pretty sure if he can, he'll get, I know he's been linked with a few of what we call number 10s, I suppose. And I do hope he gets somebody in who can create those chances and thread the ball through. And while all that's going on, sorry, I won't go on too long, but while all that's going on, he's got other players, as we all know, I didn't mention his name, that isn't even playing, that just turns up for sort of training.
Don't mention his name. Just say that the number 9 at number 10.
he must be desperate to get that guy out of the place and begin to shape the team the way he wants it. And there's no doubt in my mind that the guy we're talking about has mates that are in Arteta's dressing room. And I remember, I don't know if anybody as long in the tooth as me, when George Graham took over, and he'd done well. I think he'd won a trophy, and somebody filmed him doing the pre-season talk. And Andrew Cole was playing for us at the time. He was about 18. And Andrew Cole was on the film smirking and laughing. Now, George Graham wasn't going to have that. And before we knew where he was, before he kicked a ball that season, they'd sold him. And, I can feel for Arteta. He will have players there that he knows are not doing it for him. And he came in saying, I want them to give me 100% or 120%. But we know that they aren't doing that, because we've seen young kids come on and play wonderfly well, albeit against Dundalk, although I thought Dundalk, played quite well. But so he's in a real cleft stick. We want Arsenal to win. I don't want him to go. I'm convinced he's going to be a top manager, but he's learning while he's with us, and it's going to be tough for this first year.
But before I go I've got a question for Raj. Terry, you said that he's got to hold his tongue because he needs the senior players to be on side. Why does he need to do that? I mean, surely he's the manager, and what he says should go. If the player's not responding to his instructions, if they're not running, then surely the power should come from the manager, not the other way around. Otherwise, you're going to have player power. So why? I mean, George Graham wouldn't have done that. And when he came in Arsenal, he got rid of like 4 or 5 players. So why should Arteta, do the best he can, keep quiet and try and keep the senior players on side if they're not performing?
So I don't think he is. I don't think he is holding his tongue. I think he is being very clear. I think he's doing it through the media as well a bit. Yeah, but I do also believe that behind the scenes he's being very clear, and a lot of the sounds that you hear from the players are very positive with that regard. They do talk about Arteta being very clear about what he expects and what he wants, and even you hear about players who have not been in the side talking about the clarity that he's given them about the things that they need to do to get in the side. You know, I think he is stamping his authority. I think some of the things that he said in the press, the things that I think that many of us have assumed anyway, but whether or not it's good for him to say these things out loud in public, I'm not sure. But you know, it's very clear that he doesn't rate a lot of the players in this squad. And I think he made a comment a little while ago, didn't he, where he said he wants to play 4-3-3, but there are about 5 or 6 positions in that which he just doesn't feel that he has the skill set in the squad. He said words to the effect of that, right? And I think, look, as a general point here, which covers, I think, quite a lot of points that we've all just talked about over the last 10 minutes, is it really depends on who we want to be as a football club. You know, there's a really important topic about player welfare and pathways for our young players. Look, a lot of the fans right now who are complaining that our young players aren't getting time are the same fans who are complaining that we weren't signing big players and we weren't putting our hands in our pockets and spending money on transfers. You can't have your cake and eat it, unfortunately. And I think at the end of the day, if we're satisfied with the idea of maybe being a top 6, top 7 team, I think, you know, for the interim period, I think we can probably turn around and say, yeah, let's give these young players a chance. Let's promote more of these young players in the team because we have got some quite talented guys. But if you look at history, there is nothing that suggests that this group of players are all going to be really talented, really high-performing Arsenal-level footballers. You know, we've had these periods in the past, if we go back 10, 15 years, where we've had great crops of youngsters, and you look at where they are now, and they're not all at top clubs. It doesn't all work out that way. And I think so there's an element of us trying to figure out who exactly is that we want to be. If we want to be a top 4 club very soon, unfortunately, we're not going to have the patience to, you know, blood through a whole group of youngsters. We're going to have to be pretty selective, and we will have to go into the market. If we take Chelsea as a fantastic example of this, right? Chelsea for many years have had a really good academy. They've had youth teams which win youth leagues, which win youth cups. They've got so much talent. But there's always been a pressure on managers, and managers haven't seemed to be able to, you know, gamble on blooding through one of these young players, because the expectation of the team, of the managers, was to make that team win trophies now, and they couldn't do that. So again, it comes back to the expectations of what do we have for our club, and I think when we answer that question, then we can answer questions around whether we should be patient with young players, whether we should be, you know, signing 27-year-olds for a lot of money, and things like that, as well as the patience that we should have with the manager. I personally think that Arteta's been given a remit to sort of say, look, the culture's not right here. We need a full transformation, really. And it's not just about getting us to win right now. It's about how we set ourselves up for the short, medium and long term. And I think he's been given a remit to do that, rightly or wrongly. I think he's been given that remit. And I think if we give him that remit, then I think we need to accept that really we need to give him a lot of authority, and we need to listen to what he wants. And it sounds like in the type of if we go back to recruitment, and even if we go through to, you know, how we manage the squad in terms of youth players, it's quite a small group of people who hold the power now. You know, it's gone back to the Per Mertesacker, Edu, Arteta seem to be this little, you know, triad at the moment. That might prove to be a good thing. I mean, you know, you've got 3 players there who do know the club. You've got 2 former club captains, and you've got Edu, who was part of the Invincibles. They do know the club. So I agree, you know, there is this point around boardroom and you know, who do we have in the boardroom? Okay, you know, it might not all be perfect, but I think that there are reasons to suggest that we've got a decent formula. But again, you know, I come back to, I think we've all talked about a lot of different topics. And I think really the common thread that I can see, the common theme underneath all of these is, who do we want to be? And I think the decisions come out of that.
Yeah. Alex, what question to you? So Southampton can't rely on 5th place. Do you think Arsenal can reach top 4 this season?
I think it's really difficult. I mean, look, this season is a very, very weird season. It's curtailed. Teams that are, you know, pressing teams that encourage somebody onto them and then hit back, like a Spurs, for example. I know it's probably not okay to mention them on this, but I will do anyway. You know, they're doing well. I think Raj just raised a really interesting point there about Chelsea, who are obviously doing pretty well themselves. you know, last season when Chelsea were under the transfer embargo, or the window going into last season, that effectively gave Frank Lampard kind of a season off, you know, because they couldn't throw money after that. So bringing through young players, which is kind of the only thing that they could do, also allowed Lampard to have free reign. You know, it was an experiment because you couldn't spend £80 million on a player or something. And that's how Chelsea have discovered, you know, that Reece James is as good as he is, that Mason Mount is as good as he is, Tammy Abraham. Well, you know, we kind of knew that before already. But I think what needs to be done this season with Arteta is perhaps to say you can't put too much on current performance. And I know that this is kind of anathema to modern football fans, but if you're building a project, if you're allowing a manager to have the time to develop certain young players, but also to develop themselves and to change club culture and all of that kind of stuff, you have to give them time. Southampton is a really good example of that. Ralph Hasenhüttl, after the 9-0 loss against Leicester City, which everyone knows about, the board came out emphatically and backed him, not backed him in that kind of way that boards do sometimes, but said, we would rather get rid of the entire playing squad than get rid of our manager because we believe that he is the guy to see us through this. Now look at where we are. And that's because he was backed in the transfer market in a sensible way. But crucially, he was given time to institute his ideas. And some of that means bringing through younger players, people like Obafemi or Jan Valery or even Kyle Walker-Peters on loan. And some of that is because his system of football is difficult to coach and takes time for a squad to learn. Arteta's level of football is going to be similar. It's not the kind of thing that you can just come in overnight and get people playing that style of football. So, you know, I think if I were Arsenal at a kind of leadership level, I would be saying, okay, well, this season, you know, we've got a good run in the Europa League at the moment. We're doing well. We've got some really promising young players on the books. We want to give them a go and see which of those work out. And come what may, you know, Arteta will finish the season as manager with a whole season ahead of him, 2 seasons ahead of him, because this is a project. And I think what we've seen with clubs like Southampton is, and going back a bit, even Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp coming in, you know, you have to give people time to bed in and you have to be sensible about that. But like I say, this is modern football fans. And, you know, again, Raj made a good point. The same people who are saying, why aren't we spending £80 million on a player are the same people who are saying, why aren't we putting all of these young players in? You can't have it both ways. You have to pick something. And I think with a manager like Arteta, you give them time and you let them bring some of these young players in and you develop a style and a system that is not solely predicated on short-term results, but is about building a long-term culture.
Yeah. James, do you want to come in on this before I go into the live chat?
Yes, please. There's one point I'd like to make. Terry touches on it. If we don't get results in the next few games, that people will call for Arteta's head. If things do go south, that means that the current crop of players would have done away with 2 professional football managers within inside 30 months. One has a lot of experience in Unai Emery and one has very little experience in Mikel Arteta. If you look at the same, what Leeds United have done under the tutelage of Marcelo Bielsa, it's absolutely unbelievable. You know, if you start at the beginning, the owners of Leeds United having the best interest of the club at heart, to show the ambition to go out and get a truly world-class manager, you know, who's achieved so much with Argentina, giving fantastic players an opportunity with coaches such as Simeone, Pochettino, and also Guardiola. And those Leeds players, when Marcelo Bielsa arrived, anything that man asked of them, they did, because they were fully aware that we've got the opportunity to work under one of the best in the world, and he's going to make us better. And if you look how the ethos and the culture of Leeds United has changed under the tutelage of Marcelo Bielsa, as an Arsenal fan, I'm jealous. I'm completely jealous of Leeds United because they're only going one way, And it starts at the top with an owner that cares, that wants to show the ambition. And those players who were maligned by their own supporters, the likes of Liam Cooper, the likes of Calvin Phillips when they were in the Championship, written off by their own fans. And Calvin Phillips has gone on to become an international player. And so if you think of, if Arsenal were to get rid of yet another manager within 30 months, look at what a club that's being run properly, where everybody believes in what they are doing. We need to learn those skills. We used to have such high standards, and I know times have changed and society has changed, but I've often said, as an Arsenal fan for more than 30 years, we are slowly slipping away from our standards. We really are. And I not only do I interview professional players and managers, but also agents as well. And some clubs are being spammed with impersonal messages advocating buying even more players or taking a look at a certain player. Arsenal have 33 players on the books, and we're talking about real money here. We're not talking about monopoly money. And we're in the middle of a pandemic where people are struggling, countries are struggling, and buying is not the only solution. Because, in the case of Gabriel, yes, Gabriel has made a great impact. But before Gabriel was at Lille, he was playing for Dynamo Zagreb and Troyes. And then a couple of years later, he's playing for Arsenal. I know things can go quickly in football, but to play for Dynamo Zagreb and then Troyes and then a good season at Lille, and then all of a sudden to play for Arsenal. Pablo Mari was playing here in the Netherlands for NAC Breda the previous time that they was in the top flight in the Eredivisie. Obviously went to Flamenco and is now an Arsenal player. We can't stockpile players. We've got some very difficult decisions to make. But we've got to really stick to our guns, because making yet another change, who's to say we won't be in this position for a third time 1 year down the line?
Yeah. I think James is gone. Terry, do you think the board will stick by their man, Mikel Arteta?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I know we have, like a lot of countries, we have to a certain extent a gutter press that will, the moment a guy who sticks his neck out and is the manager of a Premier League team, the moment his team have a run of defeats, they're straight on his back, which is a shame, because I think people who've been watching football for any length of time, certainly after a few years, knows that Arteta's got a job on his hands, and he's got a long job on his hands. I do think the club is obviously aware of what fans are saying. It's a real pity that at some point we don't have a spokesman other than Arteta himself, letting us know that we're all aware that there's a project going on here, which is why I would love to see one of our ex-professionals on the directors, just so that he could say, we fully back him, and there is a process going on, and it's not going to happen overnight. For it to be good and for it to work and stick, then it will take time. So I really hope that we don't have a run of three more defeats, because the press itself will put pressure on him, and then the fans read the papers and take it from there. So I really hope, starting with Burnley, that we kind of maybe go back to our 5 at the back, or 3 plus the 2 wing backs. Allow Burnley, if they'll come out, because it's quite possible they'll just play a low block, and that's it. But I really hope that we can score a few goals early on, and then we can all get back to what we have. Some wonderful players there. We've got Aubameyang, without doubt. If you give him a series of chances, he's going to score 1 in every 3. He's actually not as clinical as people think, but he doesn't let it get him down. I think the directors are going to be sensible and leave Arteta in place, but he knows, that it's the next 2 or 3 games are very important.
Yeah. Let me go into the live chat for the first time, maybe and the last time. Let's see who's joined this evening. But Colin Young, who says the game against Burnley, the team, Tierney, Gabriel, Saliba, Cedric, and actually, Alex, very quickly, what's your thoughts on the situation with William Saliba? Strangely enough, hasn't been registered as a Premier League part of the Premier League squad, and neither as the Europa League squad. What are your thoughts, very quickly, on the situation with William Saliba?
Significant confusion, if I'm honest, because I mean, we looked at him when we did some videos on Arsenal when he was still at Saint Etienne. Obviously, his partner at Saint Etienne was Wesley Fofana, who's come across to Leicester and is doing well. I think Saliba's an excellent player, and I can only surmise that because Gabriel has sort of made particularly that left-sided position his, rightly so, because he has started very well, that the idea of having two centre-backs in the back four that are both new to the club in the same season might not be a great idea. And so Holding is, preferred because of understanding, seniority, because he's been there longer, he's more experienced and so on. But it's confusing to me because I think he was one of the really astute signings that they made before he went back on loan. So
yeah,
it's a weird one.
Yeah. Raj, what your thoughts? William Saliba, what's going on?
I think just like everyone, I was confused, not just with the fact that he hasn't been, starting from the word go, but the fact that he's almost just completely been excluded. And I think there's been some fairly publicized personal reasons as to why that could be the case. I think a lot of what Alex just said is very true. I think the idea of having two new centre backs is quite an ambitious idea, but also two very young new centre backs, right? And William Saliba, we shouldn't forget, is 19 years old, and if he was to start in the Premier League, I mean, aside from Fofana, I'm not sure that there are that many other teenagers who start at centre back by any team in the Premier League, regardless of what the expectations of that club are. So I think it's quite a lot to put on a 19-year-old, whatever the case. And I think what's clear is that he's one that we have signed with a very long-term view. Hopefully he can be a player who is at Arsenal for many years. And in the worst case scenario, we end up getting a lot of money for one day. But at the end of the day, he's someone where I think we shouldn't panic too much about the fact that he's not playing right now. And I personally trust that there must be some fairly good reasons why things have panned out the way that they have, because I believe that, if it was just a case where Arteta wanted to be careful, then he may well have played him in the Europa League a bit, and he may well have played him in cup games, but he hasn't even done that. And so I think there's got to be reasons that perhaps we should be respectful for, or at least acknowledge that probably we're not aware of or don't realise the significance of. Because I think to Alex's point, it's so interesting because Fofana's just been so good. He's been so impactful. And, I've looked at him and gone, oh, my God, if he's been this impactful, I can't wait to see Saliba play for Arsenal because, they were this great pairing. So I'm really looking forward to it. But, as I said, it has been very confusing to see him completely pushed out, but hopefully it's for good reason.
Yeah. Let me just complete this chat. Game against Burnley, Tierney, Gabriel, Saliba, Cedric, ex-Spurs player, Aziz, El Neni, Smith Rowe, Saka, Bellingham, Martinelli, Yaya, get on the bus or free the children. Yes, Saliba can play the Premier League. Ainsley Metanas for Neni to complete the entire change. James, your thoughts? I mean, so far we have seen Mikel Arteta tinkering with the first team squad on quite a few occasions. Are there any thoughts? Why do you think he keeps doing that? Do you think he doesn't know his best 11?
I don't think he knows his best 11, and I think the lack of experience is coming back to haunt him a little bit. To have your first job in football management being one of the biggest clubs in England is a big ask. If you look at obviously Klopp was at Mainz, Guardiola managed Barcelona B as well in the Spanish second division when he started out. This is managers when they go through difficult times they fall back on their experience. I'm reminded of when I spoke to Danny Cowley when he was manager of Lincoln, and he said to me, the longer you stay at the club or at a club, you know exactly what you need in terms of personnel and character and personalities. If I could just quickly touch on Saliba, you wonder about the welfare of the player, because St Etienne, although they're not doing very well at this precise moment in time, remain one of the biggest clubs in France. They reached the cup final last year and narrowly lost to Paris Saint-Germain. Saliba was a key part of that, and for him to see his teammate going on to Strive and to see himself playing in the under-23s, I think there must already be for him a tinge of regret, because one thing I've learned through my experience through the years of speaking to players, and in particular, timing is everything in football. Timing of a transfer of a manager coming in, and I wouldn't be surprised if Saliba does not play going forward, if he requests maybe a loan move away, because people forget, in particular, with young players moving abroad, some of them are going to live independently on their own for the first time in their lives. So the life skills of living on your own for the first time, or going away from your family, or going to a different country with a different language, it can somewhat be overwhelming, where you need support. You need to know that you're not going to be left. It's a good point for him to see his teammate who they achieved such great things together last season, riding the crest of a wave, and for him to not be submitted in squads and playing under 23 games, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit delusioned, in all honesty.
James, hearing what you're saying, aside from the fact that he's being a mate of his, really kind of excelling and getting lots of opportunity, with all the other things that you've said, surely you can argue that it's a great sign of player welfare that we are not rushing him in. If it is a case where maybe he may be struggling to settle into a new country, and let's say, as we've discussed, there might be a lot of personal, we understand that he's lost both his parents fairly recently. I think one of them very recently. That if there's a lot of things like that, surely actually you could be praising Arsenal for their welfare of the player. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
No, I think you make a very good point, but also a football career is very short. It goes by in the blink of an eye, and the most important thing, particularly for a young player when they move abroad, the most important thing is that they play. You can often see sometimes that careers can fizzle out very quickly. They can be somewhat overlooked. There could be a change of manager, a change of system. And I just think that Arsenal have got to be careful now, because, as I say, we have 33 players on the books, and people are still advocating buying. But first and foremost, you've got to sell, you've got to integrate the youth, and you've got to give everybody the chance to play. And I think in the case of Saliba, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he maybe looks to a loan move, because also his national team ambitions as well may also suffer. But he has ambitions to be capped by France. I know that Deschamps has also stated about his development, and these are also very important things.
Can I just say, I saw a quote from Arteta saying that he'd left Saliba out of the Europa League squad, and then he said it's transpired that he's made such wonderful progress. I do think I made an error there. So yeah. I think, and those things happen, the boy is now ready, and he would have been a lovely player to have brought on once we were three up against Dundalk and so on. So it would be good to see him, and I'm sure it'll do him the world of good to be out there playing. Yeah,
guys, listen, we've come to an end of this Easy Talk. I did say I'll keep everything to an hour, and I've just done that with a few seconds to spare. Before we wrap this one up, Alex, I want to say thank you so very much for coming on Cannon Fire TV. Thank you so very much. I'm so grateful. So grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
It's been fascinating. Thank you so much for having me on, and really interesting to hear everyone's thoughts.
Brilliant. Raj, as always, I'm loving the WhatsApp debate with you, mate.
As always, yeah, but it's nice, our little group that we have with all our panelists, like I think clearly we don't all share the same views on stuff, but I think that's part of football, right? It's all about opinions and it's all about debate. So thoroughly enjoy it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And James Rowe, thank you. James, can you hear?
You're more than welcome. Really enjoyed it, and great points made by all. And look forward to next time.
Brilliant. And last but not least, I'll tell the original Godfather himself.
Yeah,
Thank
it's smashing to meet all the guys. I know James well. Smashing to meet the other two guys there, and to get different points of view. Yeah, so it's great to be back, and let's hear it for 3 points on Sunday.
Brilliant. So there you have it. It's another end to another flagship segment of the Easy Talk Friday evening. I'm going to go and enjoy a cup of cocoa and watch some Amazon Prime. Meanwhile, guys, make sure you subscribe to Canafoy TV. Hit the bell notification button so you can receive all the latest news right here on this wonderful channel. And if by chance you've been wondering who or what you've been listening to, well, you've been listening to Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans and maybe Southampton fans. Oh,